I never thought withdrawing my own money would lead to the most humiliating moment of my life. But when that arrogant bank manager threw me out like trash, she had no idea my husband was about to pull up in his Rolls-Royce and change everything forever. Before we dive into this incredible story of karma and justice, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because you won't believe how this wealthy woman's attitude completely backfired. Trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. You know, there are moments in life when everything changes in an instant, when the world as you know it gets flipped upside down, and you realize that people's true colors shine brightest when they think nobody important is watching. This is the story of one of those moments, and I'm Shirley, the woman who lived through it. It was a Tuesday morning in September, the kind of crisp autumn day that makes you grateful to be alive. I had been married to Jonathan for 2 years now, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Most people didn't know much about my husband's business dealings, and honestly, I preferred it that way. I was just a regular woman who enjoyed simple pleasures like cooking, reading, and taking care of our home. That morning, I woke up with a mental list of things to accomplish. The refrigerator was nearly empty, we were running low on household supplies, and I wanted to pick up some fresh flowers for the dining room table. Nothing fancy, just the normal weekly routine that keeps a home running smoothly. I calculated that I'd need about $500 to cover everything comfortably, maybe grab lunch somewhere nice afterward. I dressed simply that day, wearing my favorite pair of jeans and a comfortable sweater in a soft cream color. My hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and I carried my worn leather purse that had been with me for years. Looking back, I realized that this casual appearance would become the catalyst for everything that followed. The First National Bank sat on the corner of 5th and Main, right in the heart of the city's financial district. It was one of those imposing buildings with marble columns and brass fixtures, the kind of place that whispered old money and established power. I had been banking there for several months since we moved to the area, though I'll admit I always felt slightly out of place among the suited professionals and wealthy clientele who frequented the location. Walking through those heavy glass doors, I was greeted by the familiar scent of expensive cologne and the soft hum of hushed conversations about stock portfolios and investment strategies. The interior was all polished marble and rich mahogany, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light across the spacious lobby. Everything about the place screamed exclusivity and sophistication. I approached the teller counter with a smile, greeting the young woman behind the glass with genuine warmth. "Good morning," I said cheerfully. "I'd like to make a withdrawal from my checking account, please." The request seemed simple enough, routine even. I handed over my identification and debit card, expecting the usual quick transaction that would have me out the door in 5 minutes. But something in the teller's expression shifted as she looked at my information on her screen. Her eyebrows raised slightly, and she glanced up at me with what I can only describe as surprise. "Just a moment, please," she said, her voice taking on a more formal tone. "I need to get approval for this withdrawal amount." I was confused. $500 wasn't exactly a fortune, and I certainly had more than enough in my account to cover it, but I waited patiently, assuming it was just some new banking procedure I wasn't familiar with. The teller disappeared into a back office, and I could see her through the glass partition, speaking animatedly with someone I couldn't see clearly. That's when she appeared. Amanda Sterling strode out of the back office like she owned not just the bank, but the entire city block. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention without saying a word, tall and elegant with perfectly styled blonde hair that caught the light just so. Her white designer suit probably cost more than most people made in a month, and every piece of jewelry she wore sparkled with the kind of brilliance that only comes from genuine diamonds. Amanda approached the counter with the confident stride of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. Her pale blue eyes scanned me from head to toe, taking in my casual attire with barely concealed disdain. When she spoke, her voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "I'm Amanda Sterling, the branch manager here," she announced, though she made no move to shake my hand or offer any of the usual pleasantries. "I understand you're attempting to withdraw a significant sum of money today." The way she said significant made it sound like I was trying to rob the place rather than access my own funds. I felt my cheeks warm with embarrassment as other customers began to take notice of our conversation. "It's just $500, I explained quietly, hoping to keep the interaction discreet. "I need it for groceries and household expenses." My voice sounded smaller than I intended, and I could feel myself shrinking under her intense scrutiny. Amanda's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched even higher. $500 is quite a substantial amount for someone in your circumstances, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "I'm sure you understand that we have certain protocols to follow when customers request large cash withdrawals." The words hit me like a physical blow. My circumstances? What did she mean by that? I was a legitimate customer with more than enough money in my account to cover the withdrawal. But looking around at the other patrons in their expensive suits and designer handbags, I began to understand what she was really saying. In her eyes, I didn't belong here. "I have proper identification," I said, trying to maintain my composure even as my heart began to race. "And I'm certain there are sufficient funds in my account." I could hear the slight tremor in my voice, and I hated that this woman was making me doubt myself and my right to be there. Amanda made a show of examining my identification, holding it up to the light as if checking for forgeries. She typed something into her computer terminal, her long red fingernails clicking against the keys with sharp precision. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the suddenly quiet lobby, and I could feel the weight of every stare from the other customers. "I'm seeing some irregularities here," she announced loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Large deposits followed by immediate withdrawal attempts can sometimes indicate fraudulent activity. The accusation hung in the air like smoke, poisoning the atmosphere around us. My mouth fell open in shock. Fraudulent activity? I had never been accused of anything like that in my entire life. "There must be some mistake," I stammered, my voice growing stronger as anger began to replace embarrassment. "I'm a legitimate customer, and this is my money." But Amanda was just getting started. She seemed to feed off my discomfort, growing more confident and aggressive with each passing moment. "I'm going to need to see additional documentation," she declared. "Proof of employment, recent pay stubs, and verification of the source of these deposits." The request was absurd, and we both knew it. No bank requires employment verification for a simple withdrawal from your own account. But Amanda had an audience now, and she was clearly enjoying the performance. Several other customers had stopped their own transactions to watch the drama unfold, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright judgment. "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice finally finding its strength. "I shouldn't need to prove my employment status to withdraw my own money." But even as I spoke, I could see that Amanda had already made up her mind about me, and nothing I said was going to change her opinion. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside," Amanda said, her voice taking on an even more authoritative tone. "You're holding up the line, and until you can provide the proper documentation, I cannot authorize this withdrawal." I looked around desperately, hoping someone would speak up on my behalf, but the other customers had already turned away, clearly wanting no part of what they perceived as my problems. The security guard near the entrance had taken a step closer, his hand resting casually on his radio. "I want to speak to someone else?" I demanded, though my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "There has to be someone who can resolve this reasonably." Amanda's smile was as cold as winter frost. "I am the branch manager, and this is my decision. If you cannot provide the required documentation, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." The humiliation was complete. Standing there in that marble lobby, surrounded by people who clearly thought I was some kind of criminal, I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. The woman I had married, the life I had built, none of it seemed to matter in the face of Amanda Sterling's judgment. "You're making a mistake," I whispered, though I'm not sure she even heard me over the sound of her own satisfaction. "Security?" Amanda called out, her voice ringing through the lobby like a bell. "Please escort this woman from the premises. She's become disruptive to our other customers." The security guard approached with the kind of gentle firmness that suggested he had been through this routine before. He was probably a decent man just doing his job, but in that moment, he represented everything that was wrong with this situation. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me," he said quietly. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream and demand justice and make them understand that they were wrong about me. But surrounded by hostile faces and judgmental stares, I felt powerless. So I did the only thing I could do. I gathered what little dignity I had left, held my head as high as possible, and walked toward the exit. Amanda's voice followed me across the lobby, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We simply cannot allow suspicious activity to compromise the security of our other customers' accounts," she announced, as if she were doing some great public service by throwing me out. The autumn air hit my face like a slap as I stepped onto the sidewalk. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. In the span of 15 minutes, I had gone from a simple errand to complete humiliation. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall where Amanda Sterling might see them through the bank's windows. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking as I tried to dial Jonathan's number. I needed to hear his voice, needed someone to remind me that I wasn't the person Amanda had made me feel like. But the call went straight to voicemail, and I realized he was probably in one of his important meetings where phones had to be turned off. Standing there on the sidewalk, clutching my phone and trying not to cry, I felt more alone than I had in years. The pedestrians walked past me without a second glance, everyone absorbed in their own lives and problems. I was just another person having a bad day, invisible to the world around me. That's when I heard it. The deep, distinctive purr of a very expensive engine. I looked up through my tears to see a silver Rolls-Royce Phantom gliding down the street, like something out of a dream. The car was absolutely magnificent, its chrome details gleaming in the autumn sunlight, its presence commanding attention from everyone on the sidewalk. But what really caught my attention wasn't the car itself, it was the man behind the wheel. Even from a distance, I could see those familiar, strong hands gripping the steering wheel, the confident posture that I knew so well. My heart leaped as the Rolls-Royce pulled smoothly to the curb directly in front of the bank, its arrival so perfectly timed it seemed like destiny. Jonathan stepped out of the car with the kind of natural grace that comes from complete confidence in your place in the world. He was wearing one of his perfectly tailored charcoal gray suits, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly salary, but looked so natural on him that you'd think he was born wearing it. His dark hair was styled impeccably, and his presence seemed to shift the very atmosphere around him. But it was his eyes that really mattered to me in that moment. When Jonathan saw me standing there on the sidewalk, clearly distressed, those kind eyes that I had fallen in love with filled with concern and then something much more dangerous. Anger. "Shirley," he said, reaching me in 3 quick strides. "What happened? Why are you crying?" I threw myself into his arms, no longer caring who might be watching or what they might think. In that moment, surrounded by his strength and his familiar scent, I felt safe for the first time since walking into that bank. "They threw me out," I whispered against his chest. "I just wanted to withdraw $500, and they treated me like a criminal." I could feel the tension in Jonathan's body as I explained what had happened. His jaw tightened, and when I looked up at his face, I saw an expression I had rarely seen before. My husband was furious, but it was the kind of controlled fury that comes from someone who knows exactly how much power they wield. "Which bank?" he asked quietly, though his eyes had already found the answer as they focused on the First National building behind me. "The manager, Amanda Sterling," I said. "She said I looked suspicious, that $500 was too much for someone in my circumstances." The words tasted bitter as I repeated them. Jonathan's expression grew even more serious. He gently took my face in his hands, looking directly into my eyes. "You are my wife," he said firmly. "You are brilliant and kind and beautiful, and no one has the right to treat you with anything less than complete respect." He took my hand and began walking toward the bank entrance. "Come on," he said. "Let's go clear this up." I hesitated for a moment. The last thing I wanted was to go back into that building and face Amanda Sterling again. But Jonathan's confidence was infectious. and I found myself trusting him completely, just as I always had. The moment we walked through those heavy glass doors, I could see the change in atmosphere. The same customers who had watched my humiliation with detached curiosity suddenly straightened up, their eyes following Jonathan's movement through the lobby. There was something about his presence that commanded immediate attention and respect. Jonathan approached the same teller counter where my ordeal had begun, but this time, the young woman behind the glass looked up with a completely different expression. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in his expensive suit and confident demeanor. "Good afternoon," Jonathan said politely. "I'd like to speak with your branch manager about the treatment my wife just received." Before the teller could respond, Amanda Sterling emerged from her office, clearly drawn by the commotion. But when she saw Jonathan, her entire demeanor shifted. The confident arrogance that had defined her just minutes earlier seemed to evaporate, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like recognition and fear. "Mr. Whitmore," she stammered, her face going pale beneath her perfectly applied makeup. I didn't realize, that is, I wasn't aware that you—" Jonathan's voice remained calm and controlled, but there was steel underneath the politeness. "Ms. Sterling, I believe you just ejected my wife from your establishment for attempting to withdraw money from her own account." The lobby had gone completely silent. Every customer, every employee, every person within earshot was hanging on every word of this exchange. Amanda looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "There was a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "Some irregularities in the account that required additional verification. Standard banking protocol, you understand?" Jonathan's expression didn't change, but somehow his presence seemed to grow even more imposing. "Irregularities," he repeated slowly, "in an account that I personally set up, with funds that I personally deposited." The color drained completely from Amanda's face as the full implications of the situation became clear. "Mr. Whitmore, I assure you, if I had known—" "If you had known what?" Jonathan interrupted, his voice cutting through her excuses like a blade. "If you had known that my wife drives a luxury car, if you had known that she wears designer clothes, would that have changed how you treated a legitimate customer attempting to access her own money?" Amanda opened and closed her mouth several times, but no words came out. She looked like a fish gasping for air, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "The fact is," Jonathan continued, "you made assumptions about my wife based on her appearance. You treated her with disrespect and suspicion, and then you had her removed from your establishment, all because she didn't look wealthy enough to deserve basic courtesy." By now, a small crowd had gathered to watch this unprecedented drama unfold. I could see other bank employees peering out from behind their desks, their faces filled with shock and fascination. This was clearly not something that happened every day at First National Bank. "Mr. Whitmore," Amanda tried again, her voice now pleading, "please understand. We have procedures, protocols that we must follow. I was simply doing my job." Jonathan's laugh was cold and humorless. "Your job is to serve customers with respect and professionalism. Instead, you chose to humiliate my wife in front of a room full of people. You accused her of fraudulent activity without cause, and you treated her like a criminal." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over everyone in the lobby. "I'm curious, Ms. Sterling, do you know what Whitmore Industries is?" Amanda's eyes grew even wider, and I could see her hands beginning to shake slightly. "Of course, sir. You're one of our largest commercial clients." "That's correct," Jonathan confirmed. "We maintain several accounts here, including payroll for over 10,000 employees, operating funds for multiple divisions, and various investment portfolios. Would you like to guess what the total value of those accounts might be?" The question hung in the air like a sword about to fall. Amanda seemed to shrink with each passing second, and I could see beads of perspiration forming on her forehead despite the bank's air conditioning. "I think it's time for a change," Jonathan announced calmly. "My wife and I will be closing all of our accounts with First National Bank, effective immediately. We'll be moving our business to an institution that understands the value of treating all customers with dignity and respect." The silence in the lobby was deafening. I could see the other bank employees exchanging panicked glances, clearly understanding the magnitude of what Jonathan had just announced. Losing an account of that size would be devastating for any branch, and Amanda Sterling was the person responsible for that loss. "Mr. Whitmore, please," Amanda begged, her professional composure completely shattered. "There must be something we can do to resolve this situation. Perhaps we could discuss this privately in my office?" Jonathan shook his head firmly. "The time for private discussions was before you decided to publicly humiliate my wife. You made your choice in front of all these people, and now you can face the consequences in front of them as well." He turned to address the crowd that had gathered around us. "Let this be a lesson to everyone here," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the marble lobby. "Wealth isn't measured by the clothes someone wears or the car they drive. It's measured by how they treat others, especially those they think can't help them." Looking back at Amanda, Jonathan's expression softened slightly, but his words remained firm. "Miss Sterling, I hope you learned something from this experience. My wife is one of the kindest, most genuine people I've ever known. She didn't deserve to be treated the way you treated her today." Amanda was crying now, tears streaming down her face as the full impact of her mistake became clear. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, though whether she was apologizing to us or to herself was unclear. Jonathan took my hand and began walking toward the exit. "Come on, sweetheart," he said gently. "Let's find a bank that deserves our business." As we walked across that marble lobby for the second time that day, I felt completely different than I had during my first exit. This time, I held my head high, my hand securely in my husband's, surrounded by his love and protection. The people who had watched my humiliation now watched my vindication, and I could see the respect and even admiration in their eyes. Just before we reached the door, Jonathan paused and turned back one final time. "Oh, and Miss Sterling," he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the silent lobby. "In case you're wondering, my wife could have withdrawn $50,000 today if she had wanted to. The account has more than sufficient funds." The gasps from the crowd were audible, but we didn't stay to hear any more. Jonathan held the door open for me, and we stepped out into the afternoon sunlight together. As we walked toward the Rolls-Royce, I felt lighter than I had in hours. The humiliation and anger had been replaced by something much more powerful, the absolute certainty that I was loved and valued by the man walking beside me. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Jonathan said as he opened the car door for me. "No one should ever treat you that way." I looked back at the bank one final time, seeing Amanda Sterling through the window, slumped in a chair with her head in her hands. Her colleagues were clustered around her, and I could only imagine the conversations that were taking place behind those glass walls. "You know what?" I said, settling into the luxurious leather seat of the Rolls-Royce. "I think she learned something important today, and maybe some of those other people did too." Jonathan smiled as he started the engine, that beautiful sound filling the air around us. "What did you need that $500 for, anyway?" I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had all day. "Groceries. I was going to buy groceries and maybe some flowers for the dining room table." "Well," Jonathan said, pulling smoothly away from the curb, "let's go buy the most beautiful flowers in the city, and then let's have lunch somewhere special to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" I asked. "The fact that you're the strongest, most dignified person I know," he replied, "and the fact that Amanda Sterling just learned the most expensive lesson of her career." As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of the bank in the side mirror, growing smaller behind us. I never did find out what happened to Amanda Sterling after that day, but I like to think she became a better person because of it. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that matter most. 3 months later, we received a letter from First National Bank. It was from Amanda Sterling, handwritten on personal stationery rather than bank letterhead. In it, she apologized again for her behavior and thanked us for teaching her something she said she would never forget. She had been demoted from her position as branch manager, but she wrote that she was grateful for the experience because it had made her a better person. I never responded to the letter, but I didn't throw it away either. It sits in my desk drawer as a reminder that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of how they look or what others might assume about their circumstances. And every time I need to make a withdrawal from our new bank, the staff greets me with genuine warmth and professionalism. They know me by name, ask about my day, and treat every transaction, no matter how small, as important. It's amazing what a difference respect can make. Can you believe how quickly karma struck back? This story proves you should never judge a book by its cover. If you enjoyed this tale of instant justice, smash that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed someone get their comeuppance this dramatically? Subscribe for more incredible real-life stories that will restore your faith in justice.